Oh, hey everybody, Questwise here. You're probably thinking, what the heck is going on? What kind of video is this? But I want to introduce you to a project that has completely blown my mind. A few weeks ago, a few months ago, a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, he introduced me to something that I thought in all my years as a hobbyist and a wargamer and a tabletop gamer that I would never, ever touch. Online, it's called Granny Grate Wargaming, and let me just show you exactly what it is we're going to be talking about on today's video with these weird and very, very cheap instruments. We're going to be playing a game, a historical war game called Altar of Freedom. This is a grand tactical war game set during the American Civil War, and it is a 6mm to 10mm size miniatures game where you're going to be playing out the battles, the major battles of the Civil War. And you need to do that in a scale that is that will accompany the sort of sheer scale of the battles themselves. We're talking 50 to 500,000 men and horses and equipment and cannons and artillery on a battlefield at any one given time. And to do that, to give it any sort of justice on a tabletop, especially like a 6x4 table, you need to reduce the scale down to something like 6 to 10mm. We're talking probably closer to 6mm in this video, but yeah, I mean, you could do it in 10, although and you wouldn't really have to change much as far as the sort of tabletop scale goes. But I think we're closer a little bit to 6mm. Now, I've investigated this idea before. I don't know if I've ever filmed a video on it, but years ago I came across a company called Pico Armor, and they did 3mm American Civil War, as well as Napoleonics, as well as modern day warfare figures that you could buy. And they're very cheap. You would get like 15 pieces, 15 individual sort of stands of men for a couple of dollars. They were metal. That doesn't seem like a lot, but I want to tell you that I'm going to be able to do multiple armies for less than $14. I think in total today I paid $13.68 for these supplies, and I already have paint, so I didn't have to factor in that at all. But I bought some balsa wood strips, the size, and I'll show you in a few minutes exactly what it is that we're creating with these and what the stands and the figures will look like. And I'm hoping you'll be as amazed as I am. When I was told about this, I said, no way, I am not playing with little plastic knitting grate figures on a tabletop. And then I finally saw them, and let me tell you, the cost alone was phenomenal. To be able to do an entire army for $14 blew my mind. On top of that, how quickly these can be built and they can be painted up and ready to go on a tabletop, again, was something that was very appealing to me, especially since I wanted to be able to do sort of grand scale battles. A little bit of a history lesson here in what exactly has been driving me for years into this idea. When I was in high school, way back in 1993, might have been 92. I graduated in 93, but I'm not sure exactly what year it was. I had a history teacher And I was really unsure. It must have been 1993 because I was ready to go off to college and try to figure out what I was going to do with my life. I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm 48 years old. But that's neither here nor there. History teacher, he came into class one day, unbeknownst to us, dressed up completely in Union American Civil War garb, complete with bayonet and canteen, all the accoutrements that you would expect. And without saying anything, he simply leaned against his desk. Without greeting us, he said, "It's the day after the Battle of Gettysburg. There are 50,000 dead or wounded men and horses laying in the battlefield. It's 90 degrees outside and it's raining." I knew at that moment that I wanted to pursue history. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. If I wanted to go study science, I was really interested in space. I still am, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to go study science or if I wanted to go study history. And I knew at that moment that that's what I wanted to do. And being a gamer, even at that age, I knew that I wanted to explore the possibilities of reenacting or recreating history via the tabletop. And I think that's really important. And I thought it was a really good teaching tool to be able to show people exactly on a grand tactical scale what it was like to see the Battle of Gettysburg unfold, or any of the Civil War battles, or any of the Napoleonic battles for that matter, or American War of Independence. And I wasn't sure how I was going to do that because at the time most of the figures were 25 millimeter, 28 millimeter, and I didn't really want to paint 6,000 figures to do a battle report, or find a table that was like 15 foot long. And then I later discovered things like smaller scale, things like 15 millimeter Civil War, and 10 millimeter, and 6 millimeter. 6 millimeter seems to be pretty popular right now. When I did a search online about this Granny Grate, as it's called, I believe that might be a European term, or knitting grid armies. There's quite a bit out there on the web about this. And the fact that you can do the entire battle of, maybe not Gettysburg on a dining room table, but definitely like the Battle of Antietam or Shiloh on a kitchen table, right? And so this is my table in my game room in my basement. We're talking a 6x4 table that I plan on doing some pretty big grand tactical war games on. And when I was showed this project, I knew that this was maybe the way, because 3 millimeter, my eyes are not so great at 48 years old anymore. I painted up a bunch of 3 millimeter figures several years ago, and it was really cool, but I really didn't know what I was going to do with them. And it took not a lot of time, but it definitely took some time and some strain on the eyes and stuff, because that's tiny. You're talking about the size of a grain of rice at that point, at 3 millimeters. So 6 millimeters is a nice compromise between 10 millimeter and 3 millimeter. And my good friend Charlie, he showed these to me, and he's been cranking them out like crazy. And I said, you know what, I really want to do. We were doing some samurai stuff. I've seen some people online doing fantasy battles with it, like Lord of the Rings, the early, like the First Age grand battles, Battle of Helm's Deep, Pelennor Fields. But being a history buff, I knew I wanted to do some things with the American Civil War. And so Charlie was showing me that this is entirely possible. So what I have here are some balsa wood strips. They are 1 inch wide. The bases of these things, and I'll show them to you in a second, the bases of these things are going to be 1 inch deep and 2 inches wide. So we're talking a pretty small, this is going to represent an entire battalion. And then several of those, 3 to 4 of these together, will represent an entire division of men. But I have some balsa wood strips that I'm going to cut. I bought a new hobby knife today. Not that I needed one because I already have like 4 or 5, but I thought, for $2.99, I was going to buy new blades anyway. I might as well just get a whole new knife. The blades were almost as much as the knife itself. So I grabbed another one of those, and then I grabbed this. This is Granny Grate. Let me pull one out of here for you. I apologize in advance if this is loud, crinkling of plastic. But this is called number 7 mesh. And it's probably, yeah, I guess you can see it on the screen. But this is plastic mesh made for needlepoint. It's very flexible. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut small sections of this. And we're going to turn these into individual soldiers or ranks of soldiers. So you create your base, you cut your men, you glue them onto your base, and you get something like this. Right? These are spray painted gray just to give you a base coat. And I'm going to do it on balsa wood. These are actually done on a piece of cardboard, like a piece of like cereal box. But what we found was that with the thinner bases, and this is even cheaper, right? Because this is free. You know, everybody has cereal boxes and stuff laying around that you can cut up. Card stock, whatever. But the problem is that we found that it's harder to pick these up off the table with such a thin base. So we decided to go with balsa wood. It's a little bit thicker. It gives you a little bit of some depth of stuff to grab onto. But this is what they're going to look like. I try to give you a close-up. If you cut the grids, they look like individual people. Now it looks weird, right? Because it's plastic grid that you're cutting, and you're forming into rows, right? You have these rows, and they're glued to a base. It looks weird than this close up. But once you get some paint on them, and you get a little bit of some flocking on the base, they look like this. Right? Rows of soldiers. Now this one was made for a samurai game, so they're painted kind of purple. We were going to do some samurai clan games kind of stuff. But imagine them being blue and, you know, blue and gray for north and the south. Little dots of flesh tone for faces. And from a tabletop level, they look like units of men. You know, from an arm's length, they look fantastic. And you get multiples of them together, and you have entire units. In this case, in the game that we're playing, entire battalions of men. Now, there's different ways you can do this. There's actually some videos from one of the gentlemen that shows you how to make like horses out of this as well. And again, at a tabletop's glance, or what they call in the wargaming world, arm's length, you can't really tell that it's not a miniature, that it's actually just some plastic Granny Grate cut into rows to make soldiers. I'm blown away by this. This is something that I never thought in my career that I would. I don't want to say stoop to this level, because it's really a cost-effective way to get very, very large armies on a table, and to be able to do grand tactical type of wargaming like the American Civil War or the Napoleonic battles in Europe. And I'm very excited to see how this plans out. With this, I bought this value pack. It was $3. It has 6 sheets of this. And because you're only using one row, you know, like basically this top row of mesh right here, you know, I'm going to make like probably 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 to 6 rows. So probably 2 full bases out of just the single top row of this plastic with 6 sheets. I should be able to do the Battle of Gettysburg, right? And you know, look at it here. Look at it on the table from a bird's eye view. Yeah, I'm super excited about this. I wanted to share this with you because it's a cost-effective way. If you want to do large-scale battles, whether it be historical or whether it be battles of fantasy nature. I was even thinking Rome versus Carthage. I would probably buy some of the metal 6mm elephants because it would be really hard to cut those out of this plastic grating. But at this level, from the sort of arm's length, the tabletop level, you'll never be able to tell the difference between a metal elephant that's painted and that these guys are made out of plastic grid. So I was thinking that kind of aspect as well too. And now I've seen some people online go super crazy. Now we're talking that these are literally like 6 millimeters tall. And I've seen some people do some crazy things, like add shields to them, to add spears to them as well. But my friend Charlie has actually found ways as well too, and I haven't done it yet, to use some plastic fibers to make flagpoles, so that you can add flags, regimental flags to the unit as well. You know, tiny little like 6 millimeter Union and Confederate flags for these units, just to tell them apart. And then you can do crazy things too. You can add, you know, like skirmishers or levies. You can kind of vary the number of figures on the base as well. So here's one that has some horses. You know, so you can tell this is probably like a command figure. There's the, you know, the 3 commanders and their staff, the personal bodyguard kind of thing. So horses, so you can vary the amount of figures on this. And it doesn't really matter, because according to the game itself, you're running entire battalions of men. Each one of these represents a battalion, and then several of them together represent a division of men on the table. So it takes that idea of these huge, massive battles and brings them down to a manageable scale. But that's what I was just, I just got home from the hobby store, actually from the craft store where I bought all of these things, and I was blown away, and I wanted to share with you the fact that I spent less than $14. Now if you have to buy paints, you might buy a little bit more, but you can use, you know, craft paints as well. This is not a big deal. You know, if you need primer, there might be another couple dollars for a can of spray primer. But for less than $15, just say, you can do entire grand tactical battles on a tabletop, a kitchen tabletop, and do it in a manner that looks pretty cool. So until next time, I'm Questwise, my friends. Please stay safe, and as always, game on.